Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. In this program, we'll continue our discussion with the candidates for Denver District Attorney. And then, when we're done with the DA candidates, Governor John Hickenlooper will join me to talk about his perspective on leadership and what makes a great leader. Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. This is part 2 of our special 2-part series with candidates for Denver District Attorney. Joining me are Michael Kerrigan. Michael, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Aaron.
My pleasure. Kenneth Boyd. Kenneth, thank you.
Thank you.
And Beth McCann. Great to see you again, Beth.
It's a pleasure, Aaron. Thank you.
Always good to have you on the show. Michael, I want to start off with one of the issues that we just touched on briefly in the first program, and that is transparency in the department. What do you think the community expects from the Denver DA's office? What has the office done successfully in terms of transparency? And if you believe changes need to be made, what should those changes be?
So, transparency is essential because the Denver DA is the only elected public safety official in the city and county of Denver. And that DA needs to be independently accountable to the people of Denver. And that means that the DA has an obligation to use modern methods to go out and explain how decisions are made. So, specifically, I would start with those critical decisions about uses of excessive force. Because right now the way the system works is if there's no fatality and there's no charge, people never understand why, no explanation is given, even if something has been in the news. If there's a fatality, the Denver DA's office issues an opinion letter, sometimes 9 pages, sometimes much longer, explaining the decision. But there's no follow-up. And anyone wanting more information has to go down to their office, make an appointment, and go through all the files. I believe that the obligation of the Denver DA is to go out to the public and explain those decisions. And that means that if I'm DA and there's a significant use of excessive force, not only will I issue a report, but I will hold a public town hall and forum where people can come and hear my explanation, and I will answer their questions. And probably a lot of people I won't convince, but hopefully they'll at least understand what was behind that decision. And if I made the wrong call, then that feedback still gives me time to change course. The other aspect of transparency is using technology to help the public understand what law enforcement does. And that's why modern experience is relevant and necessary. We talked in the first show about computer forensics. I do that now in my practice. I'm working with the FBI on several cases right now where my clients have been victims of crimes, international hacking crimes. So it's the sort of stuff I'm doing. And it's not the solutions from the 1970s and 80s when programs might have worked. Now we have body cams. Now people expect to have that sort of technology. So it's really important that the voters look to see who has the vision and the passion and the plans to have a modern DA's office that is communicating with the public. It's what I've done as I've led the CU Board of Regents, and that's why I have such tremendous support from the community, because I've always worked with them.
Kenneth, what's your take on, and you
Sure.
referenced transparency previously. What would you add to what you said before?
Sure. So Bill Ritter was one of the first DAs in the nation to open up the files, the fatality files, to the public. Anybody in the public can come down and take a look at those files, and I'm happy to have Bill Ritter's endorsement of my campaign. But we're in the information age now. Things are different than when he was the district attorney, and I'm the only candidate that's committed to pushing transparency as far as it's ever been pushed in Denver, and that is through a public fact-finding review. This is not something that I just thought up myself. This was something that I went around and said, what are other people doing around the nation to help with this issue? They're doing this out in Las Vegas. I had the opportunity to fly out there and meet with the assistant district attorney who heads up that program. Out there, they stream the public fact-finding review hearing live on the internet. It's on their version of Channel 8 or their local cable TV. And it really allows people to hear what all the evidence is. Because I think the frustrations come out of, well, there weren't charges, but there was this big civil settlement, and I don't understand how that happens. Or I only heard this little blip in the newspaper about what happened, but I didn't hear the the full story. And so I want to make sure that we push that information out in a very public forum so that people understand. The DA is the one that is tasked constitutionally with making this decision. I want to make sure that people understand, again, what the information was and what the legal and ethical obligations are when making a filing decision.
Being in the office, have you had the opportunity to go to the DA, to go to Mitch and say, hey, we ought to do this, and some of the other ideas you've had? Have you done that, and has the DA said, no, I'm really not interested in doing that?
Well, I haven't talked to him about the public fact-finding review specifically. We have talked about community engagement things, and also we've talked a little bit about my idea to, again, with transparency. I'm the only candidate that's committed to partnering with an independent institute or a university in order to open up our files and take a look at, are we seeing patterns in how we're charging things and in our plea bargains to see if we're contributing to anything that's causing a racial disparity or pushing mass incarceration. We've had preliminary discussions about doing that. I've already reached out to the University of Colorado of Denver, their Department of Sociology and Criminology. They're very excited about potentially partnering with us on that.
Okay, Beth, give me your take on especially on transparency.
Sure. So the DA's office needs to be much more transparent than it currently is. I think the office has become kind of insular, and the deputies focus on their cases, which is great, but they need to be out in the community. So I plan to make it a requirement of their performance reviews that they actually go to neighborhood meetings, that they talk to their communities, that they talk to their neighbors, and they explain what the DA's office is doing, but also get the feedback from the community. I spend a lot of time in the community as a state representative, and I get a lot of good ideas from my constituents. And I've been in the living rooms and the kitchens of people in Northeast Denver who are afraid that their young black sons are going to be harassed, not by a stranger, but by the police department. So I hear that anguish in their voices. But I've also been at the bedside of a Denver police officer who was shot. So, I've seen it from both sides, and I will be fair. That is one of the things that I have done my entire life, is be fair and look at the facts objectively. I do think there are situations where the DA has not filed when cases should have been filed. Particularly, I was in the courtroom when Judge Martinez ruled that the DA should have filed a case against a sheriff's deputy who threw an inmate up against the wall. It was actually the judge who filed the complaint. I saw that video. It was pretty clear to me that that was an assault, and it was not filed by the DA's office. So we need to look at those cases objectively, but we need to be transparent about our decisions and our results. I definitely will be holding public meetings to talk about my decisions and answer any questions that people have. I have town halls. I have one coming up on Monday. I have them frequently as a state representative, and I think it's critically important that the DA be out in the community and be transparent.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. I want to come back to this issue of not just transparency, but the charging situation and the DA's decision not to charge in certain cases. So we'll take a break. We'll be right back with our candidates for Denver District Attorney.
They have brought criminal charges and used for excessive force, and those are very difficult trials to win. But I've talked to prosecutors who've tried many of these, and part of the problem is the victims, those who receive that assault, don't trust the Denver DA's office and are reluctant to be cooperative witnesses. And this is because the perception is in the public that when there are clear-cut cases, that they're not brought. So certainly there are cases that have been brought, but there's lots of them that should have been brought. And again, this really puts good officers at risk. Good officers who don't use excessive force are put at risk because the public doesn't know who to trust. Because they see the videos of Deputy Lovinger, which is the case Beth was referencing, being thrown into a wall. Judge Bird was in the courtroom. I practiced in front of Judge Bird. She's no lightweight. She filed a complaint. And the Denver DA's office they did not prosecute that case.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scenes photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today. Hi, I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. It's tough for me to limit myself to 140 characters, but you can see how well I do by following the show on Twitter. Follow me at @Aaron Harber. Hi, I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Because I've never done endorsements or commercials, people ask how are our programs funded, especially because we provide them as a public service to all our broadcast outlets. It's expensive to produce our show, whether we do them here in Denver or go to places such as Aspen, Washington, D.C., or even Iraq. The answer is we depend on contributions to support our work to bring you some of the nation's top opinion leaders. Individuals, businesses, foundations, and other nonprofits make tax-deductible contributions to the Democracy and Media Education Foundation to help allow us to continue to work for you. To find out more or to make a donation, just go to dmefd.org. The DMEF is a tax-exempt public charitable organization and has promised to dedicate 100% of every contribution to support our public affairs initiatives. If you believe as I do in the need for a forum which promotes civil discourse and mutually respectful discussion, I hope you'll decide to make a contribution today. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scenes photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
Join me and watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch The Aaron Harber Show.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch the Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at www.harbertv.com.
Welcome back to the show. This is our last segment in part 2 of our 2-part series with the candidates for Denver District Attorney. So Beth, you were talking about the charging situation, and certainly when you look at the number of cases where Denver police officers have been accused of excessive force, where people have actually died, where Denver sheriff's deputies have beaten a prisoner or assaulted a prisoner. This DA seems to be, as much as I like Mitch Morrissey, very reluctant to charge law enforcement officers with these crimes. Is that a fair assessment? And if so, what's the issue? What's the problem? What needs to be done?
Well, there's certainly the perception in the community that the DA has been reluctant to file charges in excessive force cases because he hasn't. And there are situations where I would have liked to have seen more investigation done. And in the case that I was mentioning, the judge even commented that they hadn't interviewed all of the witnesses and they didn't even interview the victim himself. The DA's office can ask for additional investigation, or the DA has investigators in the office that can be asked to do additional investigation. And if I felt the need to have more investigation, that's what I would do. But, you know, these are tough situations. We're asking officers to make split-second decisions. And so we really have to balance and look at the law and see if there was a violation of the law when we make that decision. And as I mentioned, I intend to have more input into that decision. So it's not just one person, but several people taking a look at the cases. And once a decision is made, relaying that to the public will be extremely important.
Kenneth, what's your take on this? Obviously, you're in the office and you've probably been involved in some of these discussions, but has the DA not filed charges where you think charges really were appropriate?
Well, Beth is wrong, first of all. The Denver DA's office has charged police officers under Mitch Morrissey. There's been, I believe, 23 officers that have been charged during Mitch's tenure.
I don't think it's about excessive force, though.
Well, that's wrong, because they have charged people with assault and in excessive force situations. There have been 7 officers or 7 cases that have arisen out of excessive force. The last 3 cases that went to trial were 2 officers, Officer Porter, who was charged with, I think, 2nd or 1st degree assault, I'm not exactly sure. He was not convicted, and that was very shocking to us. I remember when I was in the office, everybody believed that that was a very egregious case, very serious injuries that the officer caused, and not guilty verdict. The other 2 charges were, you probably remember the video of the officer slamming the guy's head outside of Coors Field. That was another officer that was charged. Again, a not guilty verdict after trial. And then a sheriff's officer, a female sheriff's officer, who open hand slapped a female inmate and was brought to trial on misdemeanor charges. Unfortunately, again, not guilty in that particular case. I think what's important for me moving forward is this public fact-finding review that I keep talking about. And what I haven't mentioned is this review happens before my decision becomes final. And like Beth did talk about, we do have the power to continue to investigate or to change the way, change course on an investigation. And having this review before that decision becomes final will be vital to helping to see, are there gaps in the investigation that we need to finish doing before that decision becomes final.
Michael, what's your sense of the current DA's willingness to file charges and prosecute sheriff deputies and police officers that are believed to have used excessive force?
So it has become a self-fulfilling prophecy, making these cases difficult to win. Because Beth is incorrect, they have brought criminal charges and used for excessive force, and those are very difficult trials to win. But I've talked to prosecutors who've tried many of these, and part of the problem is the victims, those who receive that assault, don't trust the Denver DA's office and are reluctant to be cooperative witnesses. And this is because the perception is in the public that when there are clear-cut cases, that they're not brought. So certainly there are cases that have been brought, but there's lots of them that should have been brought. And again, this really puts good officers at risk. Good officers who don't use excessive force are put at risk because the public doesn't know who to trust. Because they see the videos of Deputy Lovinger, which is the case Beth was referencing, being thrown into a wall. Judge Bird was in the courtroom. I practiced in front of Judge Bird. She's no lightweight. She filed a complaint. And the Denver DA's office they did not prosecute that case.
She filed a complaint stating what?
Stating that the deputy's conduct was completely inappropriate, unnecessary. He supposedly, the deputy claimed he was doing it to protect the judge. There was an inmate in shackles, shackled to his waist, shackled in his feet, steps forward, takes 1/2 step forward to ask the judge a question, and Deputy Lovinger slams him into a wall. And the public sees that. And so not only is it a problem when if those cases aren't charged, the public deserves to have a better explanation as to why. They shouldn't take a private lawyer dragging the DA's office into the courtroom to explain why even a misdemeanor wasn't charged. Because the public doesn't understand it right now, Aaron. They don't understand in situations with Marvin Booker, no criminal charges were brought, and that was a very complex case, but they don't understand how a civil jury would then award $6 million, including punitive damages. It's a very complex legal system that I understand it as a lawyer, but the public doesn't. And it's the DA's job to explain it. And this DA hasn't done it. If I'm elected, I will.
Okay, Michael, I'm going to let you each have, we only have like 90 seconds left, but each give you half a minute to tell me why, if I were a citizen and a registered voter of the city and county of Denver, why should I vote for you for Denver DA?
So I'm asking you to vote for Michael Kerrigan for Denver DA because I'm the one with the right balanced perspective and experience as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, working in a modern private law practice to bring about the kind of criminal justice reform that we all need and deserve.
All right, that's succinct. You win the prize for succinctness and clarity. Kenneth.
Sure. It's about experience, and it's about relevant experience, and it's about a plan, a real vision for where the office is going to go, transparency, modernization of the office, the community engagement piece, and mental health. I have a plan for all of it to take us forward into the future.
All right, thank you very much, Kenneth. And Beth, you get the last word.
Yay. So Denver really should be in the forefront of criminal justice reform, and I have the unique background to lead us in that direction, having served as a prosecutor, a manager, and a legislator. So I've supervised, managed, and made the law. That experience gives me the breadth and depth to go out in the community, work with the community to rebuild trust in the DA's office, and I will do that as your next DA.
All right. Well, I want to thank each of you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Make sure you go to each of the websites of these candidates and read more about them. You can also, of course, watch part 1 of our 2-part series to see how they answered other questions as well. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. After the break, we'll be featuring a special discussion with Governor John Hickenlooper about his take on the elements of great leadership.
You know, I was a scrawny kid. I had thick glasses, Coke bottle glasses. I had acne, you know, even before I was a teenager. And my dad had gotten very sick when I was 5. So my dad died a couple weeks after my 8th birthday. And it's funny, if you grow up without a father in your life, you sort of have to be your own father. You have to kind of invent yourself, and you're not really sure that you're wearing the right clothes or that your glasses aren't kind of dorky. And in my case, they were, you know. And other kids, you know, the kids in school become a mirror of whether you're doing the right things or not. And when, you know, in 3rd grade, I was that kid that everybody didn't like and teased and made fun of. And, you know, that saps your confidence so rapidly. And especially when you go home. I was the youngest of 4 kids. Nobody at home paid attention to me, and my mom was going through, you know, hard times with my dad. So it took me years. I mean, I was literally in my 30s before I began to really feel comfortable in my own skin.
Your opinions, ideas, suggestions, and criticisms related to guests, topics, questions, or the host are welcome. Please send an email to producer@harbertv.com.
Hi, I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. For information about the program, who our upcoming guests and topics are, and ways you can participate, please go to our website. That's harbertv.com. And most of all, thanks for watching. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbertv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching. Hi, I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. It's tough for me to limit myself to 140 characters, but you can see how well I do by following the show on Twitter. Follow me at @Aaron Harber. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. We depend on contributions to support our work to bring you some of the nation's and world's top opinion leaders. Individuals, businesses, foundations, and other nonprofits make tax-deductible contributions to the Democracy and Media Education Foundation to allow us to work for you. To find out more or to make a donation, please go to dmefd.org. Thanks for watching the show and for your support.
To obtain a DVD copy of this program, please contact info@harbertv.com.
Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. This is our special segment with Governor John Hickenlooper talking about leadership. And Governor, again, thank you for joining me.
Of course.
Leadership is an issue I know you've thought about, studied, and certainly practiced. Let me start off with, can leaders be made, or are leaders born? Do you think people are natural born leaders? Can you learn to be a leader? Can some people not learn to be a leader? What's your take on all that?
So it's funny, I've never really thought about it. And certainly when I was in school, I was never a leader. I did like to organize the weekend touch football game, or, you know, I was someone like to kind of organize people just because I was such an extrovert. But no one would have ever said I was a leader. And I think the truth is that part of human nature, there's an inclination for all of us to have a higher purpose than just ourselves, and that each of us should be a leader. And you know, I would define leadership as someone who is able to persuade one other person to do something that maybe they weren't originally thinking about, right? If you can,
something good, I hope.
Yes, exactly. Well, but you can lead people into mischief. I'm not saying that it's always positive. I wish it was. But I think that ability to lead other people or even one other person is in all of us. And I think you can, within a certain business and within a state government, you can create an environment where everyone can feel a leader and can feel that their contribution is valued.
Do you think there are people who are natural born leaders or no?
Yeah, well, there's obviously some genetic. Some people are bigger and speak with a deeper voice, and they act in a way that is more commonly associated with leadership. Others kind of through life learn it. I think there's a lot to be said for your family and the environment you grow up in, whether you have the confidence. I grew up with no confidence. It's a long story that you don't want to go into, but lack of confidence in the end doesn't necessarily keep you from being a leader, right? You have to complement that lack of confidence. You have to, substitute for it in certain other ways. Let's say by being able to help other people, by really kind of giving of yourself more freely than someone else might. To again get to that same kind of leadership point. Sometimes just do the jobs that nobody else wants to do. In nonprofits, the person who's willing to go out and make all the phone calls and do the fundraising, right? That person sometimes can become a leader just because other people look at what they're doing and say, huh, that's really helping this nonprofit, this organization.
All right, I am going to pin you down. Tell me why you didn't have confidence when you were young, and is that really true?
I was a scrawny kid. I had thick glasses, Coke bottle glasses. I had acne, even before I was a teenager, and my dad had gotten very sick when I was 5. So my dad died a couple weeks after my 8th birthday. And it's funny, if you grow up without a father in your life, you sort of have to be your own father. You have to kind of invent yourself, and you're not really sure that you're wearing the right clothes or that your glasses aren't kind of dorky. And in my case, they were, And other kids, the kids in school become a mirror of whether you're doing the right things or not. And when, in 3rd grade, I was that kid that everybody didn't like and teased and made fun of. And, that saps your confidence so rapidly. And especially when you go home. I was the youngest of 4 kids. Nobody at home paid attention to me, and my mom was going through hard times with my dad. So it took me years. I mean, I was literally in my 30s before I began to really feel comfortable in my own skin.
In terms of leaders, what are some examples of great leadership? People, and whether historical figures or in current times.
Well, Ralph Carr, governor of Colorado in the in the early 1940s, at the beginning of the war, and he was a Republican. He was being talked about as a potential vice presidential candidate, and yet when the federal government decided they were going to start internment camps for American citizens, but who were of Japanese descent, he just said that was wrong. That's not American, and he stood up and he fought relentlessly against that system. It cost him his reelection. I think that's a wonderful form of leadership. There's a statue of him in downtown Denver in Sakura Square. And when I was trying to raise money to start the Wine Coop Brewing Company, and this was in the late 80s, terrible recession, could never raise enough money, I'd get depressed. I'd sit down there and buy that bust. And when I first saw it, I'd gone to the library, and I was going there all the time to research brew pubs and bars and restaurants. And I researched, Ralph Carr. And then I'd go sit by his bust, and I'd feel inspired. I'd feel like no matter how bad a day I'd had, that I'd go back and try harder the next day.
Great. John, thanks so much for joining me.
You bet.
My pleasure. That was Governor John Hickenlooper. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks again for watching.
Please contact us. We want to hear from you. And thanks for watching.